Right, welcome everyone. We're just giving a few moments for everyone to join the room before we get started. It looks like we still have some people joining, so we will be starting in just a few moments. All right, looks like we got some people in here. We will go ahead and get this roundtable started. Thank you all for joining us today for a discussion on creating successful community partnerships. During our discussion today, if you have any questions, please send those on over through the Q&A feature. We'll be sure to get those answered for you. At this time, I will go ahead and hand it over to our roundtable host for the day, Joy Dixon. She is the Director of Partner Success at BellXcel. Joy, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Creating Successful Partnerships for Youth Programs. And if you're joining us today, you're likely wondering how to build or strengthen partnerships with other organizations that drive real impact to your program. Well, guess what? You are in the right place. Today, we welcome 3 youth program experts to share strategies that have worked in their respective communities. Phillip, Jimenez, Pauahi, McGinn, and Joe Manzoli. Each one of these experts have super strengths that are evident from speaking with them, whether it's Phillip's servant leadership mindset towards constituents as a path to mutual success, Joe's mission and passion for serving as many scholars as possible in his community, or Pauahi's penchant for finding partners that provide engaging enrichment that benefit scholars and their families. Each panelist has experience that I hope will resonate with each of you today. Now, as you have questions, please type them in the chat below, and we will address them during Q&A at the end of today's webinar. Now, I would like to invite each panelist to introduce themselves and then dive into an overview of their program specifically. So we'll start with you, Phillip, followed by Pauahi, and then Joe.
Thank you, Joy. It's good to be with you and the Community Rec and BellXcel. Greetings, everyone. And my name is Phillip Jimenez, and I have been serving our West Cook YMCA as its president and CEO. It'll be 8 years in about a month. And it's good to be with you. And I'm excited to hear what my other colleagues have to share as well.
Thank you, Phillip. Pauahi?
Hi, my name is Pauahi McGinn. I'm the Director of Child Development for San Bruno Park School District in San Bruno. Well, I've been here 37 years, 7 volunteered, and then I finally got paid at 30. So 30 years I've been in the district, working from yard duty, teacher, office manager, cafeteria, and now I'm the director of the program. So thank you, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Pauahi. This evidence person wearing so many hats is like so many of our other guests on today's program. And then Joe.
Thank you, Joy. My name is Joe Manzoli. I'm the COO of the YMCA Greater Nashua in Nashua, New Hampshire. I'd like to say bright and sunny Nashua, but it's kind of gray and cool today. But very excited to be here. And I took a look at some of the participants, and it's good to see some friends from around the country that are hopping out here. It's really neat.
Thank you, Joe. Well, you know, hopefully our sunny place will send some sunshine your way. Now, I'm sure our audience is eager to learn more about each of the programs in your community. So Phillip, would you tell us more about West Cook YMCA?
Sure. We're located just about 7 miles west of our corporate office, of our national office for the YMCA movement. Specifically, demographic in terms of the programs that we're providing, which are the signature after-school program, as well as the Power Scholar Academy program, both in partnership with BellXcel. What we've done is really wanted to create a year-round model where about 10.5 to 11 months of programming is being offered, in many cases to the same students, and therefore making it a year-round model. Demographically, we're looking at a population size of about 4,800, actually just under 6,000 students total. And both school districts, 89 and 90, are very different from one another. In District 90, only 4% of the population is considered low income. In District 89, 66% of the population is considered low income. Both combined, about 11% of our students are individuals with IEPs. In terms of the risk factors, as Erickson Risk and Research Score goes, overall, our 89 students, which is the lion's share, are characterized as high to moderate risk factor. And as well as, I would say about 31% of our students in District 90 are either meeting or exceeding ELA, where in District 89, 90% are not meeting ELA. So one of the reasons we picked both of those school districts is we really want to know that the model works, regardless of school district or population or student need. That's pretty much the majority that I wanted to share on this first slide, other than our first summer pilot with our newest school district resulted in 1.5 months of gain in reading and 2 months in math. And that was just in our first launch with that group in a pilot. And we've also been very pleased with how we've been recognized as a trusted partner with our school districts. It's taken a while to get there. We'll share more about that in future slides, but ultimately we have several partners, of which a few are listed on the slide there. Thank you.
Thank you, Phillip. And those are certainly outcomes to be proud of. Now we're going to take it over to the West Coast in California with Pauahi and the San Bruno Park School District.
So just to give you a little idea where we are, I can hear airplanes from San Francisco Airport every day. So right across the freeway is San Francisco Airport. So that's what we're known for here in San Bruno. Yeah, San Bruno is a wonderful community. I think our enrollment is about 2,300. We have about 29% English language learners and about 34% social economically disadvantaged. But basically, we just keep going. Our scores in the Brigance assessment in the fall of 2016, we had a benchmark of 27% increase. And in the fall of 2021, we went up to 52%. Wow. So we're doing something right here. I have a very dedicated staff. We have a really tight group of people at our district office that support us immensely and are behind the preschool and early learning. So I run a program. I run a part-day preschool and a full-day preschool, 10-month and 12-month. So basically, we're always here. During COVID, we actually closed down in March and came right back in July. So it was a quick turnaround. I called my teachers the nomads of the sun, because we were outside 99% of the time, just following the sun. Wherever the weather is warm. For any of you that know San Bruno, we're a pretty windy city. We are a tight-knit community. We adopted the cops who come and visit us regularly. Also, they read to us twice a month. We also have the San Bruno Public Library who reads to us once a week. We participate. One of our favorite things to do is touch a truck, which, yes, I stole the idea from somebody else, but all the trucks in the community come out, dump trucks, street trucks, police trucks, backhoes, and the kids can touch and get into the trucks. It was such a big hit that the community asked us when are we going to do it again. So not only were we excited, but our community was excited. And I even have a fiscal manager who wanted to come up and touch a truck. So that was fun. We have Dia de los Niños, which is at the end of April, which is Day of the Child that we've been doing. And we bring all kinds of activities and cultural activities as well as the PTAs. All are there. We do activities. The superintendent reads a book. The kids get to go home with a passport. Once they complete their passport, they get a book. So another one on here I see is the 4-H. Yes, we go to the 4-H also, which is right around the corner too. So it's a nice walking field trip. Yeah, so we have, basically I have an activity monthly for the kids that involve community members, whether it was a a person who was a doctor who actually went to one of our schools, an engineer. We had a board member who also juggled and juggled for the kids virtually. We've had connections with Skyline College too, to come down and read and do community work with our families. So I like it.
That's wonderful, Pauahi. And I mean, you've shared so many of the diverse type of partners that you've included, and definitely look forward to diving in more and providing that insight from you. And then Joe, would you provide an overview of your program at the YMCA of Greater Nashua?
Absolutely. So our YMCA serves about 13 communities in Southern New Hampshire, ranging from urban areas like the city of Nashua, which has about 100,000 people in it, to rural communities with 7,000 or 8,000 people, and we provide programs and services to folks throughout those communities. Our Power Scholars Academy is based in the Nashua School District, and last summer we served, or historically we served about 375 students in that program, depending on which summer within the global pandemic we're in. But 375 is our goal for this summer. And we serve students, rising students to grades 1 through 9. And something unique about that is those rising 9th graders can actually earn high school credit. And so we can work with middle school principals to identify kids who could benefit from getting that leg up by going into high school with some credit. Phillip shared some of the results from Power Scholars in his community, and we've seen similar results with last summer, an average of 1 month increase in reading and more than 3 months in math. And without a program like that, research shows that those kids would fall behind by 2.5 to 3 months. So we're talking a net gain of 6 months in math, and those issues have just been exacerbated over the last couple of years with kids having to learn remotely. We saw that especially last year. We have built a really great partnership with the Nashua School District, and one way that shows is in their commitment to the program. So about 2/3 of the funding for our program actually comes directly from the school district. The YMCA runs the program. We invoice the district for many of those expenses. And one of the reasons why they've bought in, and I'm sure we'll touch on this later on, but prior to us starting this program, the school district had 18 different summer programs, none of which had any evidence that they were working. And so we were approached several years ago to see if there was a way to kind of consolidate all of that work with something that has evidence behind it. And so we've been really excited about what we've been able to do. And we don't do it alone. Obviously, the Nashua School District is a major partner in that work. The 21st Century Learning Center is also an incredible partner with us in helping to manage that program and staff that program. We've also partnered with other local agencies like First Robotics, which is based in New Hampshire, Cliff, Nashua Prevention Coalition, and many others that provide services for us in that program, as well as those partnerships expand throughout the rest of our work.
Mm. Thank you so much, Joe, for highlighting those significant outcomes, as well as the variety of programming that you're providing to your scholars in your community. And so, as we all know, there has really been tremendous growth across the nation and intentional efforts to really forge meaningful partnerships between schools and after school and summer programs, as many of you touched upon. And so increasingly, this field is recognizing that these partnerships are essential to efforts to expand when, where, how, and what students learn. These strategic partnerships with other organizations really can be vital to the success of your organization's goals and initiatives. And you all touched upon some of these, but I would be curious to hear, what is your approach to identifying opportunities for potential community or school partners? Phillip, I'd love to start off with you.
Sure. I think the first thing is knowing what it is you're looking for within a partner, right? And a lot of that begins with identifying where your areas of opportunities are as an institution, and that partnership brings real value to you and to the students that you're trying to support. I think also recognizing that it's a long-term investment. Partnerships, when they begin, can be great, and then inevitably you're going to run into some rough patches. And having that long-term commitment, I think, gives you the patience and the time and the stick-to-itiveness to see it through and to work through a problem and things of that nature. So I would say those are two key. And then the third one is sort of more of something you get to see over time, having grace with one another. I think those are the best partnerships where you're kind of like, yeah, we really missed the one on that one. So let's take a step back and let's talk about how we might be able to take another angle at this or take another approach. And I think those are the best, because that's where the real learning is really happening. And then trust, right? So one of our superintendents always tells us, first we try, then we trust. And I've always enjoyed that phrase.
Try then trust. I love that. Joe, would you like to step in and share any of your approaches for identifying opportunities?
It usually just comes down to listening. We will just reach out to potential partners and just hear what their needs are and see if there's a match. And sometimes we've got something in our back pocket that we can bring to the table and say, hey, we've done some work somewhere else that may fit that need. And then most often we just say, hey, let's work through this a little bit more and we'll develop something. We're doing that right now with another school district who wanted some social emotional programming for middle school students this summer. And so got my wheels turning and meet with our team, and we'll go back with them and we'll work through it. But I think where I've found that we've been most successful is when we just sit and listen and really hear about what someone's challenges might be, and then see if it might be the fit. And we may not be the right fit. And that's important to understand too, is that we can't be all things to all people. And but for me, it just starts with listening.
Thank you, Joe. And you mentioned something about the right fit. So what does the right fit look like in your experience? What qualities are you looking for in a potential partner?
That's a really good question, Joy. This is probably not a great answer. It really, to me, kind of comes down to a gut feel, right? Are we going to be able to work together? Do the goals of our organizations align? I think that's really critical. Are we both coming at this? What is our end goal? And does that goal fit for both of us? And it does come down to personal relationships as well. Whoever's in that room, being able to see a future in which we can work together and accomplish these things together is important. But a lot of times it is kind of a gut feel, and we've developed great relationships in wherever I've been in my career, and I've been in different communities. The best partnerships, ultimately have a good working relationship and good personal relationships between the people who are at the table. Absolutely.
Thank you, Joe. And Pauahi, you touched upon a wide variety of community partners that you work with in San Bruno. How did you involve community partners like the local police to identify barriers and assess the needs of the community?
Well, first of all, I don't do it by myself. I had a great big lift consultant, Nancy Krause, who was amazing, my partner in crime. I'd start out with an idea and then we would just explode. One of them was when I was a teacher, my kids were extremely afraid of the police department and the policemen. Policia, no, because they didn't always see them in the light that we'd like them to see them in. And sometimes it was a tough situation. So that was my goal. I was gonna get those police officers to connect with the kids, and they did. In fact, at the end of our first Big Lift Inspiring Summers, they came in and gave me a card that must have been about a thank you card that must have been about 2 feet wide long, They thanked us for involving us. The parents were there. The connection just happened at community time. Nobody was afraid anymore. I come from a diverse background of being discriminated against in very critical points of my life. So my heart is open, and I too, as Joe said, want to listen. I want to listen to what I can give adults and children and staff opportunities that they may not get. They may not get to go to a petting zoo. They may not get to walk to the police department and go in the jail cell and listen to the dispatcher and whatnot. So I think my approach is thinking like there is no box. I just ask and hope that it's going to go. And usually, I think Joseph also said your gut feeling makes it work.
That's great. I'm so glad you shared that, Pauahi. And would love to hear from, this is to all three of you, would you share any experience you have with partnering with local parks and recreation departments and how you built that relationship?
So I'll touch on Dia de los Niños, which is coming up. Usually we have months to prepare for this, but COVID threw us off a little bit. So we have 2 months to prepare for our big day. And we have a board member who leads Dia de los Niños. It's a passion of hers. And she reached out to the Park and Rec department, and they provide us with tables, with chairs, canopies if we need it, and open the certain bathrooms, and just give us a space for a whole day. We start sitting up at 9. The community comes at 12. We close down at 4. So after cleanup, we're there all day. So the Park and Rec really gave us a space to be able to do this program.
Oh, that's fantastic. And Joe, I saw you nodding your head there.
Yeah, we've done some work locally with the Parks and Rec department. Specifically, we worked with them for there's a better name for this. I'm going to forget what we call it, but it's like a fitness in the park series in the summer where we provide free yoga and group exercise classes in the park. And other communities I've been in, we've been other YMCAs I've worked at, we've worked with Parks and Recs department to actually partner on camps. Early in my career, we had camps that would kind of pop up in town, like the little village green in the center of town for summer camp programs. So it's certainly a wonderful resource. And like anything, it's building those relationships. I can share, locally here in Nashua, there's been a lot of turnover with Parks and Rec. So as we start to have conversations, they can slide back when someone leaves.
Thank you, Joe. And Phillip, if you would like to comment on how you all have had any experience with your local parks and recreation departments.
Yeah, maybe instead of giving examples, I'll talk a little bit more about sort of what happens in the background, right? So I think sometimes Parks and Recs, because Ys are traditionally zip code agnostic, right? So we don't have to worry about whether you're in our community or not. We can technically serve anyone. So park districts have kind of a different approach. They are very specific to the zip code that they belong to. So really understanding, does the park district see this as a competition, or do they see us as a partner, and navigating through that, just being really honest about it, right? Also looking to see where and what vision or mission or outcomes are looking to seek. So when you approach them with a partnership, there's an intrinsic value to them in the partnership, right? So it's just being really practical about those things. In many respects, park districts get income from local taxing bodies, but we have a lot more freedom. We have a lot more, ability to pivot and to go in and out of situations. So understanding how we're both different, but we can face common needs and challenges, I think that's where the value is.
Well said, Phillip. And you all have all touched upon the power of relationship building. And of course, you've all touched upon things that have worked really well. But challenges are a normal part of the process when building something of value. As leaders, I imagine that you face a number of challenges during partnership building. So could you speak to the following from maybe a 10,000 foot level? And I'll start, I'll kick it back over to you, Joe. What are some common barriers or challenges that you face when prospecting and cultivating partnerships?
I can't think of challenges in terms of cultivating those relationships. I think, there are certainly times where, kind of going back to an earlier answer, where, as we have conversations, it may appear that it's not going to be the right fit. And that's not a problem. It's just a fact of life. One thing that is a risk that I've experienced, and so I answered earlier that building that relationship is really important. What's also important, and I've learned this the hard way, is that relationship really should be between the organizations. If that relationship is too Joe-centric or too reliant on that one person, if someone leaves, the relationship can really be severed. And we've seen that where, I've had a really good relationship with a superintendent moves on, and then we realize, wait, our relationship was with the superintendent, not with the school district. And so we've learned that we need to mitigate that risk and really look at instituting systems that ensure that the partnership is between the two organizations, and that there's some structure behind it and some formality behind it. So it's not reliant on, if I win the lottery tomorrow, that partnership's not going to go away. Maybe I'll fund it, but it doesn't not rely on me being there.
Thank you. I mean, that is such a key point, because so many times this is a people to people sort of business, right? And so it's easy to know someone that works at a Y who also has a friend at a school district, and they're helping because they know you, but keeping in mind that organizational structure and that enterprise-wide relationship is so key. And Phillip, I would love to hear, what common challenges you may have faced in maintaining partnerships in your community.
Yeah, well, understanding that it's going to take time, and you can't just only see or speak to the person when there's official meetings, that you do want to look for times to understand the broader spectrum of what that partner is going through, whether it be the institution or the individual that you tend to interact with. But also a little deeper into that is understanding the ecosystem in which they're in and what influencers they're facing or issues they're facing, because those influencers in that ecosystem affect the relationship, right? So it's not just good enough to know, oh, well, they have a need to help kids with XYZ. You kind of have to understand how the political environment might be for that school district, right? What challenges they're facing as a school district or as an administration within that school district, so that you can almost prompt certain questions based on what you're saying to sort of develop a deeper appreciation for that ecosystem that they're living in. I think when you do that, it helps you proactively see what might be coming and work towards that, as opposed to being surprised, oh, something's come up, and things of that nature. And the last thing I'll just say is open dialogue. Really, just open dialogue. Joe really said it. The first part of listen, and then be completely transparent. Really, I think that's where the partnership really stews and takes root.
Absolutely. Keeping those ecosystems and influencing factors in mind, and communication always being so integral to success. And Pauahi, could you share with us a lesson that you've learned from navigating transitions and maybe other changes with partners?
I think I'm just open. Like I said, I've been in the community for quite some time. My husband's born and raised San Bruno, and so my kids couldn't get away with anything here, and neither can I, right? So I have to just be open and ask. I think the most difficult thing that I might run into is when somebody says, I don't know how to talk to the littles. They're not going to care about engineering, but then I bring an engineer in who talks about the plugging and unplugging your cords. Don't just yank them out. And all the kids are like, whoa, don't just yank out a cord. Well, there's a reason behind that. And so she explained it so they understood. And then the next day they're like, we don't yank out cords anymore. So I think it's just, all of us trying to be open and honest and get on each other's page and learn as we're doing it.
Absolutely. And now I'd like to pivot to storytelling and impact. Impact stories often put a face or name to your organization and bringing that mission to life, as well as providing a glimpse into the lives of individuals and the communities that you all serve. So I'd love for you to share, and I'll start with you, Joe. How does your organization report its success or outcomes to the larger Nashua community?
Yeah, so we, in a variety of different ways, we use social media. We have we call Wednesday Wonders. So every Wednesday we're sharing some story of impact, whether it's related to Power Scholars Academy or any of the work that we're doing in the YMCA. So that will go out on social media. We email all of our members. We've got great relationships with the local press. So we are very successful in getting stories into the local paper and online. We also go on the road, and so specifically related to our summer Power Scholars Academy, we will go and speak to the board of the school board. We'll go meet with leadership teams at schools because we want them to know that, because we're asking them to put some effort in as well, right? They're helping us identify students throughout the year that would benefit from the program. We want them to see how the program worked. And there's two pieces of that for us. So I mentioned earlier that with Power Scholars Academy, we've got that data, right, to show how many months of reading or math we saw in the program. And that's really effective. What's or maybe even more important are those stories of the one kid. So it's great to talk about the average gain in math, but if we can speak to the child who wouldn't get off the bus the first day, and by the end of the first week was getting up in front of her classroom, reading aloud to everybody. Those stories are what really gets at people. The data is wonderful and it certainly helps tell our story, but it's the story of that one kid or that group of students who benefited from being in that program that helps strengthen the partnership as well. Right, so it's being able to share our story with the community at large, but for us to be able to go back to that partner or multiple partners and share those stories of impact is so powerful.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, sharing the person behind the data, so seeing how they're impacted. Phillip, could you share how your organization reports its success or outcomes to your community and how this process really helps you to sustain your work at West Cook?
Yeah, I just checked to see who was on the guests on the list here, because I'm going to just be completely honest. We're not great at it. We're the analogy that I think I've come up in my head is that we're so focused on building a football that we forget that there's a whole stadium full of people watching this gameplay, and we're just so focused on building the right football that we forget to tell our story. And I that's just the reality for us right now. You could call it staff constraints. You can call it we're just focused on what we're doing every day. But it's an area I've already taken a couple ideas from my other panelists writing. So I'm getting a lot out of this exchange as much as I'm sharing. But yeah, we can do better. The times that we do, we're a combination of data rich and impact rich. So the impact is more the human aspect of how a child or a group of kids were impacted, where the data really speaks to, what are the measurable outcomes that are happening. I think the analogy we have in our head is when the superintendent and the leadership of the school is struggling and saying, how are we going to help Phil? Phil's really struggling right now, that they look, we need to call the West Cook YMCA. Because they specialize in challenges, right? So I think that's where we want to be the value added.
That's an excellent tagline, Phillip. We specialize in challenges. And I really appreciate your candor, because there may be other folks on this webinar today who are in the trenches, as like so many of you all are, especially in the middle of the pandemic, where you just kept your head down because you wanted to keep helping these scholars. You wanted to keep helping these families. And so I'm sure that your story is resonating with many folks on this call as you're reflecting on how to make sure folks in your community know about the great work going on at West Cook. In Pauahi, I'm curious from a 10,000-foot view, what does collaboration look like when sharing the shared impact of your partnerships? You work with the police department, you work with Parks and Rec, you all just do so many different things. You work with the libraries. What does that collaboration look like in sharing? Is this, do you send it to your partner specifically and ask them to collaborate on joint social media posts? We'd love to hear what happens there in San Bruno.
Well, because of the fact I have a great connection with a variety of businesses in San Bruno, I just send everything out. I do social media. We walked the main street and handed out flyers and actually got some students into our program because our numbers were low. And we found businesses that we hadn't seen of, or people that wanted to work with us. So the superintendent has a letter that he sends out to the community. I present at board meetings, which are live so people can see them. As I said, we walk Main Street, social media, board meetings, newsletters. The principals all send out a newsletter and they'll ask if the preschool need anything, and we send it out. So I think it's just, we just all just kind of try to support each other. We have weekly admin meetings that we can keep in contact with each other, and just the word of mouth is really what spreads it. And so I just remember somebody saying that they heard somebody talking about that chubby little Hawaiian girl on a bus to go see her for preschool. It was me. I was like, okay, I'm the girl on the bus. So I said, just word of mouth. That's how we just try to get it. And like I said, social media and hard copy things, but a lot of it is word of mouth and around here.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Pauahi. And a little earlier, I think Phillip said it, that partnership building is a long-term investment. And so after you all have gone through the process of identifying and securing partnerships, we know the real test includes maintenance to ensure sustainability. And this long-term sustainability involves trust and shared vision. I mean, the word aligned goals has come up several times. So I'll start with you, Phillip. Could you describe the ecosystem that should be in place to really foster this collaboration?
It begins with integrity. Wherever they touch the proverbial elephant of the West Cook YMCA, they should see the same thing, right? So, we should not shriek away or shy away from, hey, we're struggling with this, right? I think that's the core of, if they can trust that what we're saying and how we're approaching it is consistent each and every time, facing challenges becomes so much more easier. And what I listen to in the ecosystem is when they're starting to share real pinch points, real pain that they're facing internally. Because that means, one, there's a level of trust in which they're ideating with you that may not necessarily have to do specifically with your partnership, right? And so I look at that. I look at an authentic statement from my partner around something we've helped them solve without prompting, because that gives me a signal about, or maybe they're avoiding a certain conversation. So I'll tend to kind of walk in that room and say, hey, how are we doing in this area? Are we doing a good job, or do we need to sort of do some thinking around that? And sometimes you have to open up or take the Band-Aid off for the partner, because they may value the relationship so much that they don't necessarily want to strain it in any way. So you open it up, and that sometimes that gives them the freedom to sort of collaborate around problem solving.
For sure. Integrity and having a proactive approach really go a long way. Joe, would you like to add any other items that you think would be in an ecosystem that could foster collaboration?
Yeah, in terms of ensuring that sustainability of the partnership, I think Phillip nailed it with the trust, and it was mentioned earlier too about just communication, having those touch points, and again, something. But by the way, we're not perfect at any of this stuff, so I don't want us to come across like we know everything about this stuff, but because we've stumbled along the way. Where we're at our best is when our partnerships are seen as benefiting both or multiple organizations, that everybody feels like they have a stake. It's not, what we don't want is for any of this work to be transactional, right? That we're just popping in and running a program and leaving. We want to work together on this. And our work with the local school district with Power Scholars Academy is a perfect example where the first summer we were doing the lion's share of the work. But now that we're entering year 5 or 6, we have meetings where we are one of 20 at a table, because there's the transportation director and the food director and the HR director and from the school district all sitting at the table because we all have a stake in it. And that helps with that sustainability of those partnerships when we are all really truly collaborating, and it's not just one organization just kind of popping in and doing that work. So having regular check-ins, having a formal agreement, that's something that we found to be more important than maybe I thought earlier in my time. But all of those things go hand in hand in terms of keeping these things going.
Thank you, Joe. And actually, that's a great segue into my next question that I would still like to pitch over to you, and then I'll go to Pauahi. What would you say is your approach to expanding network opportunities as well as identifying community champions? I mean, you mentioned it almost sounds like a coalition of sorts, because you have all these voices with varying perspectives at the table. So what would you say your approach is in expanding those opportunities?
Yeah, well, I'll start with saying the more people at the table can also be a challenge. There are times I'm sitting in those meetings going, why am I here? Because they start talking about things that have nothing to do with me or our work. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. What's your approach to expanding network opportunities as well as identifying community champions?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is we are constantly reviewing our work. So again, specifically related to this Power Scholars Academy, we debrief. I mean, we're doing it as the summer goes on, but we have a debrief at the end of the summer, and we identify what gap areas we may have had. Where could we have done better? Could we have brought enhanced the experience for the kids by bringing in a different partner? And identifying those gaps helps us to identify potential other partners. Along with that, that debrief is conversations with the school district, and this is true of any, we have partnerships with medical providers. We have a lot of different partnerships, but having those debriefs to understand where the gap areas are, but also where there are other opportunities. And we've seen, we started this work in the achievement gap space with a very small program about 8 years ago. And because of that work and the partnerships we've created, we are now in multiple districts and doing really interesting and unique programs. We have a superhero training academy that we go and run in every kindergarten in our area. That came out of conversations where we were talking about this program, and then they say, well, we're also kind of struggling with kids making that transition to full day school. What can we come up with? So, I think we're kind of repeating ourselves here, but that constant communication and relationship building is what ultimately leads to identifying potential other partners or other opportunities.
Thank you, Joe. And then Pauahi, what's been your approach to expanding network opportunities and identifying community champions? I mean, in such a close-knit community, there sounds like there's several.
I think you just have to have the passion to do it. Thinking about retirement it's right around the corner for me, and that's the hard part, right? I've been doing this for so long, and it's fun. And yeah, it's hard, but you know you're doing it because you're passionate about why you're doing it and who you're doing it for.
Thank you. So now we are going to open up the floor to questions from our audience. And so I just want to remind you all to please type any questions you have in the chat. And right now, it looks like we have some from a few of our guests, our audience members here today. So from Jack, he wants to know, how do you justify value when in a partnership that requires real dollars to change hands? As a why, some taxpayers do not think their municipality should provide funds to another nonprofit. Also, how do you get legal involved in developing agreements? Who would like to take that one first?
I'll take that because I've known Jack for about 20 years. So this is my way of reconnecting with Jack. In our case, Jack, with the Nashua School District, so as I shared, our Power Scholars Academy will cost over $300,000 this summer because of the size of the program. It's on a per student basis, it's the best deal going, but it's a lot of money. And so we will raise probably about $100,000 for that. And the rest will come from the school district. In that case, we sort of got lucky. As I shared earlier, the district was running, I think the number was 18 different summer programs. So they were already funding those programs, and they just identified that the fact that they weren't quite working for them. And so there wasn't any pushback. We've had other success in other communities, particularly with school districts, where again, they've got funding, particularly now, there's ESSER funds and all sorts of other funds that they're looking to spend. And a lot of times those are tied to having to partner with somebody else. So we've had great success in that area, and we haven't had any pushback from the community in terms of where are those tax dollars going. They see the benefit, and that's going back to the storytelling, ensuring that people see the value in what we can do in that partnership. In terms of the legal agreements, it depends, Jack. We've had some that we do review with legal, and others where it's been a step beyond a handshake agreement. For us, it depends on just sort of the depth of that arrangement as to whether we want to just make sure we're all protecting ourselves.
Thank you, Joe. Would anyone else like to chime in on what their approach is in their communities if they've had this experience and really sharing the value?
Yeah, I think sharing the value it goes back to one of my comments about really understanding what their needs are and how the ecosystem that they're in the midst of influences ultimately how they will transact with us, right? So if it's economic, one of the first things we do when we pick a market space is we go out and insulate ourselves economically by going out and getting funding. We just go out and get funding, because the last thing I want to do is be at the 11th hour of a negotiation with a new partner or a new program or something of that nature, and money becomes the issue, right? That doesn't serve anyone. So we do go out and get multiple sources of funding beyond the funding that comes from the school district, right? We also are very careful to make sure that some school districts have a philosophy around charging families, right, for the program, So we want to make sure that we have the financial whereabouts to say, you know what, for those families that you might want to charge, we're going to scholarship them. We're going to give a complimentary youth membership, because that, I think, at the end of the day, says more to the family and to the community than negotiating a great agreement. So I would say that's the way that we approach that.
Thank you, Phillip. And we have a question from Devin, who wants to know, has anyone ever done naming rights for areas in the facility based on a partnership?
Well, I was about to answer the question, so you added the last part. So not necessarily based on a partnership. So we have not said, well, partner with us on this and we'll name the aerobic studio for you. We do have parts of our facility that have some naming rights attached, and those were just donations so the facility I'm standing in now, we built 11 years ago, and part of the fundraising process was identifying options for people to put their name on something, which is great, and it helped us at the time. There are times where I think, okay, it's been 11 years, you got a lot of use out of those dollars, so there's a downside to that.
Thank you, Joe. Does anyone else on any other panelists have experience in this regard? Okay. So we have a question from Lisa, and I think this will be our last question unless someone else drops another question in the next minute or so. This is specifically to Joe and Phillip. Are either of you hiring school personnel for out of school time or for summer camp to run the program?
Yeah, when we approached this market space and we knew it was going to be competitive, beyond looking at what we were offering as a unique value proposition to the school district, we also knew that critical to the service, program, product, whatever you want to call it, being successful is the staff. So yeah, we go after individuals who want to take a break from the school district or want to maybe shift or lower the gear, whatever you want to call it. We also pay $25 an hour. And it's full-time, and we include insurance. Because if you're going to compete and you're going to provide the real tangible change in the outcomes of that child, but this can't be a gig, it can't be a seasonal thing. We're really committed to this, right? Now, we also know that we're not going to be in the traditional after-school market. We took out all of our summer camp. We're totally focused on signature after-school program and PSA. We're totally focused on the BellXcel partnership, and we're totally focused on evidence-based or data-informed programming, period. And we'll let volume work itself out over the long time, but we're really wanting to be clear about the value proposition that we're bringing, and we know that staffing is critical to that.
Thank you, Phillip. I see that helps from Lisa in the chat. Okay, well, it doesn't look like we have any more questions at this time, but this has been such a robust conversation today. And I really hope that you leave with some nuggets as you identify new partnerships and strengthen current ones. And once again, thank you to our guests, Phillip Jimenez, Pauahi McGinn, and Joe Manzoli for sharing their expertise and experiences with us today. And here at BellXcel, we will continue to interview thought leaders in the industry on topics that matter most right now, including top 4 ways to strengthen SEL in your programs and working with children with special needs in your summer and after school programs. So please check your inbox for an invitation to register soon. I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Brittany, but it was a pleasure being with you today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joy, and thank each of you for your conversation today. That was so insightful, and thank you all so much for sharing. Just to our attendees, I just wanted to send a quick reminder that this webinar will be on demand on the Community Rec Magazine website. We'll also be sending it out to you in case you want to share with any friends or colleagues or revisit any of the topics that you learned about here today. So thank you all again. We hope to see you at the next webinar. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.